we won. And I believe we won against spectacular odds. The WHO Pandemic Treaty was under negotiation along with amendments to the international health regulations. The whole mess was so convoluted and boring that it was almost impossible to figure out what it was that they were doing. And in fact, they engaged in many shenanigans over the course of the negotiations, changing the names, having drafts in secret that we couldn't see. There was all kinds of stuff done to just cause any rational person to walk away because you couldn't even tell what the status was at any moment. Nonetheless, as of yesterday or the day before, as a vote was approaching in Geneva at the World Health Organization, Tedros...
The vote will have been by member states, representatives of member states.
Right. And Tedros announced that the attempt to reach agreement had failed. The treaty is dead.
Hell yeah.
Hell yeah. So the treaty, if we treat the treaty and the International Health Regulation amendments as one unit, it's not as simple, right? Again, part of the game here is to prevent us from knowing what's where, right?
Right.
The International Health Regulation amendments are still alive, though heavily amended in response to the pushback that we have, I believe, triggered to happen by bringing awareness to this issue. But the sum total, the 30,000-foot view analysis, is that what the World Health Organization, largely at the behest of the United States and China, was trying to do was to create a framework in which the World Health Organization, at the sole discretion of the Director General, could declare a pandemic over absolutely anything that it wished to call by that name, and that having declared a pandemic, that this would trigger requirements of all of the member states to do what the WHO directed. And things that were included, some of this is so shocking that it's even been lost. I was talking to one of the prime movers in the movement against this treaty, and he had forgotten that the initial draft of this thing actually included in the named medical remedies that the WHO wanted the right to impose on citizens of signatory states was gene therapy. They literally said not only did they want the right to mandate vaccines, they also wanted the right to mandate gene therapy, which would, of course, include mRNA so-called vaccines, and it could also include editing of your genome. The World Health Organization actually wanted the right to edit your genome if it decided that was a good idea. So, among the things in this package were the ability to mandate drugs, vaccines, gene therapies, the ability to redistribute materials globally in favor of what they were calling equity, which I believe was a cryptic. So the entire package, I believe, was designed so that in a rematch over COVID, the globalist authoritarians would simply win across the board. Everything that went wrong for them during COVID that caused them to lose control of the mainstream narrative, that caused people to become aware of the dangers of the therapies that were being mandated on them, to become aware of the drugs that they had at their disposal that were truly safe and effective. They didn't like how badly things went for them during COVID, and this was their attempt to fix all of the things that had worked against them. And in so doing, what they were really up to was something analogous to the Five Eyes partnership. The Five Eyes partnership is a security alliance that allows countries, including the United States, Britain, New Zealand, Canada, to violate the rights of their own citizens by allowing another state to violate the rights of those citizens and then trading the information. So if you imagine that our Constitution prevents our government from doing things like spying on us, but it doesn't prevent us from hiring some other government to do the spying, that's a way of getting past a constitutional prohibition. Yep. This treaty was the same thing. the idea was the founders of the U.S. and the other states of the West did not envision that there would be some quasi-governmental authority above our national authority. And so if you find the rights that citizens have as a result of a well-structured constitution to be galling, one thing you can do is say that that's not the top authority. So imbuing the WHO with these special powers was really an attack on constitutional freedoms by people who had grown sick and tired of, discovering that those things couldn't just be wished out of existence. There's a very correct reaction, which is the treaty is dead. The amendments to the international health regulations, though they've been tremendously weakened, is still technically alive. They could pass something, it could mean nothing. They could pass something and it would help them a little bit. But the chances that the international health regulations might pass are significant, but they don't contain what they contained back when we became so profoundly alarmed.
So let me just clarify that what I was reading from with regard to equity and such was from the original compilation of proposed amendments
to the international health regulations.
Yes, to the 2005 international health regulations. And so I do not have the updated, how they have further weakened that. What I have is the document as it existed in mid-October of 2023.
Yep. I think a new draft came out as the failure of the treaty was announced. So I've been trying to get that draft and I haven't seen it.
Yeah.
Zach, do you want to show my tweet from yesterday? So anyway, I just wanted to show this because it will at least give you a sense for a conflict. So I said, we have won a decisive victory against tyranny at global scale. The failure of the WHO pandemic treaty is a clear defeat for Goliath and a demonstration of David's true power. Congratulations to all involved and to every free person. Let's finish the job, which it turns out is a slogan of Biden's. I did not realize, but let's finish the job. Hashtag defend the West.
What job is he trying to finish?
He's trying to get to lunch, hoping that there will be ice cream. Okay, so can you now scroll down into the responses? Keep going. Oh, wait, top one, a second. It may not be over, Brett. And then there's an allusion to the internet, the amendments. Victory will be when and if these monsters are all arrested for their crimes against humanity. Next one, the treaty won't go away. It will change. Anyway, so imagine that those of us who are arguing that this is a major victory are running into, and in fact, many dissidents are saying, actually, this isn't a victory. These people don't stop. It's going to come back, yada, yada, yada. I want to put this in context so people understand it. I'm not saying that victory is not that these people are done, okay? Right. This is a victory that was surprising. These people will not stop. The kind of people who dream of having this kind of power over citizens, especially at global scale, will be that way for the rest of their lives. But what I want to point out is that the failure of the treaty, because the signatory states became aware of the hazard, because their citizens were alarmed, the failure of that treaty is an admission of weakness. Right? They don't like to admit weakness. If they could have watered this thing down so much that it meant nothing and still passed it so that it looked like they had strength, they would have done it. But they couldn't pull it off. So there's a thing amongst wolves when they battle, right? The losing wolf reveals its jugular vein. Right? It is showing its weakness to end the fight. It doesn't want to fight to the death. And so by giving the winning wolf the power, then the point is there's no reason to continue the battle.
It's an acknowledgement. It's a white flag.
Yeah, it's an acknowledgement. And so I'm not claiming these people aren't going to do this again. Of course they will. But there's no way that they're revealing the weakness of their position by admitting defeat on this document is not evidence of a profound victory for us, and I think a very surprising one. So anyway, should we stop being vigilant? No. Should we, ignore the international health regulation amendments? Of course not. But should we treat this as the victory that it is? Yes, not only because we deserve to celebrate it, but also because the most important thing here is that we learn the correct lesson of what tools we have at our disposal, how they work, how to wield them, how to turn the tide when the odds are against you. And if we look at this like, oh, it's nothing, they're always playing a shell game, then we won't learn the lesson of what we accomplished, and we won't be any better the next time, right? Mm-hmm. So anyway, this is an arms race. No doubt they learned the lesson of how we beat their treaty, right? They will be better next time. So we need to at least learn the lesson of how we did this so that we can have a sharper tool again next time. The idea is feedback is the coin of the realm with respect to getting smarter. And that's true for the individual in the context of education. It's also true for the emergent David, right? David has to have good feedback. And so Goliath knows this.
Yes.
And Goliath is trying to pollute our understanding of what we accomplished so that we don't learn the lesson correctly. And I'm not telling people, some of my favorite dissidents are very cautious about this victory because they've seen so many dirty tricks that they just don't know what's going to come from where. But we have to not talk ourselves out of understanding what we accomplished.
Right. And celebration is not an invitation to rest on one's laurels. Right. Recognition of success is not an invitation to stasis. There can be no stasis. We have an interlocutor, a Goliath interlocutor, who will not be static, who will change its game. And as you have said many, many times, the major advantage that an emergent David has against an emergent Goliath is being smaller. It's more nimble. It's more able to redirect at the point that it sees opportunity. Goliath can't redirect as easily, but with each one of these things, it becomes more knowledgeable.
Meryl Nass was one of a small number of people who were tracking the progress, the details. This is one of the experts on this process. This is somebody, I know her in person. I also quite admire her and what she's done over this treaty. So she says with 3 exclamation marks, the WHO's pandemic preparedness plan is over. The entire pandemic preparedness project has been rolled out through lies and stealth. Globalists created legal documents that are replete with euphemisms and flowery language, always disguised to hide the document's true intentions, but we saw through them and didn't let them get away with it.
And this is Meryl Nass writing on Twitter yesterday. And that is what they are doing today, attempting to make people think they can still pull it together. They don't want you to savor this sweet victory. But they're not stopping me from pulling out the corks and dancing. The treaty cannot be resurrected from the ashes. It is not a phoenix, despite what some want you to think. This was the foundational argument for the treaty. As negotiators are fond of stressing, quote, nothing is decided until everything is decided. I heard this over and over and over as I watched the proceedings and read about the negotiations. Yet the phrase is hard to find today with regard to the WHO. I suspect the thought police have scrubbed it from the search engines. So, nothing in the treaty can rise from the ashes of the negotiations to be voted on this week. The treaty is done. People now understand what it was about, what was in it, and how it was the first step to a one-world government. They have said no to all that. What about the IHR amendments? While it is true that some articles in the amendments had the agreement of negotiators and could be voted on, the agreed-upon items were not the dangerous ones. They tended to be the flowery language ones, not the meaningful ones, with a single exception. Interestingly, the negotiators were fine telling nations to surveil their citizens and combat misinformation and disinformation, i.e., they were fine with censorship and propaganda. This, however, should not surprise us, since nearly all of our governments are already surveilling and propagandizing us. So while this provision is odious, it really doesn't change anything. Nations are trying to legalize surveillance and censorship using linguistic tricks like calling truth hate speech. The U.S. government hopes to overturn the First Amendment, freedom of speech, in the Supreme Court, where Missouri versus Biden is headed. This is another battle we need to win. Soon, I hope. It is a major one, because control of information is the absolutely essential piece the globalists must hang on to in order to succeed. Here, you can read them for yourself and see what was agreed and what was not agreed. Don't be fooled. We won the first round in the war of democracy versus one world government. It is time to celebrate.
Yeah. Hell yeah, Meryl.
It's powerful.
Really, really appreciate what you did. And I think one of the lessons, which we'll get back to, is that the world is never going to understand what you did, for reasons that I will make painfully clear. But some of us do know what you did, and appreciate it.